Hello and welcome everybody, I'm the Rambling Director. Sorry that I got a little off my schedule the last couple weeks, but it's only because, and I can officially announce this, I'm very excited about this, I have been working to get the set, the location that we're going to be using for my Phantom movie officially approved. And as of yesterday, we have the theater. We have the Phantom's Theater. I could not be happier. It was my first choice. In fact, I really have wanted this location to be the setting for this movie since I wrote the script. Even before that, when I was a kid and I first started thinking, oh, well, when I grow up I want to make a Phantom movie, this was the only theater I ever seriously considered. It was my first option, and I have it. I'm going to be able to use it. And they were very kind. They were unbelievably helpful and really supportive of the vision for this film. So it's really exciting stuff, but that's why I've been a little bit off in my schedule. Promise we'll be getting back to normal in the next couple weeks. Today we're going to be talking about the 1971 film, The Abominable Dr. Phibes. This film was created by Robert Fust, I hope I'm saying that name right, and stars Vincent Price, my horror movie boyfriend. I just love Vincent Price. This film is a horror comedy from England, and it is a true blue comedy. You get some horror comedies that are, they're not really comedies, they're just kind of like have a sense of humor that's vaguely disturbing. This film is a true comedy and a true horror film, and towards the end becomes a true tragedy, actually. The film opens with Dr. Anton Phibes playing the organ. And funny enough, this one was not only clearly inspired by the '62 film, which opens with a very similar sort of sequence of the Phantom playing an organ, but it also is a big inspiration to me. The opening credits of my film will feature the Phantom playing an organ. Now, I say this film is funny, and truly it has a quirky sense of humor. Some of it's just regular funny stuff, but a lot of the deaths are meant to be funny. Now, if you just saw them out of context, you might think, you know, is that just a cheesy movie? They thought that was scary at the time? No. Some of these death scenes are not meant to be scary. They are meant to be funny, and they truly are, and the more you think about them, the funnier they get, like this one. That's right, my friends. You just saw a man get batted to death. I love that. After Dr. Phibes and his beautiful femme fatale assistant, Volnavia, great name, she's played by Virginia North, by the way, they go and head home, and Dr. Phibes plays his organ some more, along with a clockwork band. And despite being clockwork, they are such a band that they actually have a name on their drums. It's awesome. Now, one of the things that makes this film so funny is the bumbling detectives. Very much in the Sherlockian tradition of having the detectives from Scotland Yard always arrive just a little too late to do anything effective. And there are just some fantastic jokes with these guys.
Where the hell are you?
I'm up here, sir.
Oh, sure you are. When you finished up there, I want you to question the butler.
They have a really dark sense of humor, but also there are a lot of the jokes that are just really playful, like almost the sort of things you would imagine in a Mel Brooks murder comedy. Like, check out this death where a unicorn head gets catapulted across London into a man. He just gets impaled by a giant unicorn horn. And then, as if that wasn't enough, the unicorn horn itself is sort of threaded, and so to get the man off of the wall that he's impaled in, they have to turn him like a corkscrew. Look, how do you watch any of these scenes and not just bust out laughing? I mean, I've watched this movie many times, and it still makes me laugh hard. And by the way, this is one of only 2 Phantom comedies that I know of. One being The Phantom of the Paradise, and then of course Dr. Phibes itself. Phibes actually uses fake skin, which he stitches together to form a Vincent Price mask, so that we can see his beautiful, handsome face throughout the film rather than his deformed one, which is a fantastic makeup job, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Now, it's impossible to point that out if you've seen it without pointing out that it's obviously the inspiration for the Robert Englund Phantom of the Opera movie, which was made in the 80s. Now, this is kind of a cool thing because very few films and very few franchises give you the opportunity to do what the Phantom movies do, which is to see how single little threads get woven and eventually become something in later movies. Phantom movies inspire other Phantom movies, which inspire other Phantom movies. It's kind of like the Christmas Carol adaptations in that way, except much more extreme, if you can imagine. Going along with that same thread, Dr. Phibes is unable to talk. His voice was destroyed in the car wreck that deformed him. So he has this little speaker that connects into his neck, and this little speaker box, as I understand, was the inspiration for Winslow Leach's voice box in Phantom of the Paradise. So that's Phantom comedy inspiring Phantom comedy. And by the way, while I'm drawing connections, there's just no debate that this movie had to be the inspiration for the Saw films. Some of the devices, like the mask that crushes your head, or the key hidden in somebody's body which you have to surgically remove in order to get them to escape from the death trap, these things are just directly, well, I was going to say directly out of Saw, but those things in Saw are directly out of Dr. Phibes. What's really unique about this in the pantheon of Phantom is that it's actually a mystery. Now, the mystery doesn't last the whole film. It only lasts about the first third to the first half, at which point everything is more or less revealed. But what's kind of unique is that we see Phibes killing these guys, and we start to see that he wears little symbols of the Jewish alphabet around his neck. Well, what could that mean? Why is he killing these people? And slowly the mystery is unraveled that he is a professor of theology. That's where the doctor in Dr. Phibes comes in. He has a doctorate in theology. And he is killing people in ways that mirror the 10 plagues of Egypt from the book of Exodus. Now, some of the plagues are a little questionable. I haven't really looked it up to see if there's a difference across translations, if different Jewish sects believe that there were different plagues in Egypt. I don't know what would account for some of these. Maybe the filmmakers just got kind of creative with their liberties, you know, as they tend to do. I'm a Christian, I'm very well versed in the Bible. Some of these plagues are simply not there in the book of Exodus, but they are very entertaining to watch in this movie. He actually believes that God himself is on his side, and that God wants him to do this to set the soul of his wife free from her suffering. Where this is really interesting is that when Phibes' backstory is finally unveiled, we find out that he wasn't just in a car wreck that deformed him and ruined his voice. He was on the way to his wife, who was undergoing surgery, and there were 9 doctors taking care of her, and she died on the operating table, which again he sees as a sign. 9 doctors and the first 9 plagues. It all matches up. And he has this obsession with the number 9.
9 killed you, 9 shall die, 9 eternities in doom.
By the way, while we're talking about that little obsession, he speaks in a lot of poetic verse, and he has this beautiful poem that he says to his wife over and over, several times throughout the film.
Sweet queen and noble wife, I alone remain, severed my darling too quickly from this life, of fires drawn and of memories met.
Now, the last Doctor in the list is played by Joseph Cotten, who is one of my favorite actors of all time. You probably would know him from Shadow of a Doubt or from Citizen Kane if you don't know him from anything else. Joseph Cotten is a fantastic actor, and though in his day he was very much appreciated, I would say that he's kind of underappreciated now as one of the great classic actors. In fact, I feel that way about Vincent Price. Vincent Price was a Shakespearean actor. The man was incredible. And although we remember him mostly for a lot of his work in B-movies, he could be genuinely terrifying. And of the B-movies he was in, he's always the best part. He's a little bit like Tim Curry in that way. Throughout the film, the detectives just keep arriving a little bit too late, or finding these guys killed in these very, very elaborate ways. In fact, the movie poster, I think, has the tagline, "He devised the 9 most devious murders ever committed," or something like that. And they are all really interesting. Like, he ties a guy to a chair and drains every drop of blood from his body, and that's the plague of the water turning to blood. He has this ice machine, and he traps a guy in a car, and what's the opposite of hotboxing? He freeze boxes this guy to death. Like, lowers the temperature to like 30 below zero. and the guy freezes to death, and that's hail. The plague of frogs is a frog mask that crushes the guy's head. A woman's face is covered in honey, and then locusts... I'm sorry, give me a second. Then the locusts eat her face off while she is just sleeping normally. Like, she's not been drugged or anything, she's just asleep. By the time Joseph Cotten is introduced, we already see that the police are going to try to protect him and keep him safe. Now we're getting into some spoilers now, and I have my spoiler tag up in the corner, so if you don't want to see those, just fast forward until you stop seeing the spoiler tag, and then you can continue from there. Joseph Cotten's son is kidnapped, his one and only son, who it would also technically qualify as his firstborn, right? And that's when we get the idea that it's the plague of the firstborn. He's going to kill Joseph Cotten's son rather than killing him as punishment, because Joseph Cotten headed up the surgical team. He was the man ultimately responsible for Anton's wife's death. There is a really elaborate and beautifully crafted scene where there's like this thing of acid, and it's trickling down slowly, inexorably, as Vincent Price says, and it's going to pour acid on the kid's face, and then we realize the kid is actually, it's not just that the kid is going to die, he's going to live, possibly he could live, but he's going to have a face like Dr. Phibes, and that's when Vincent Price takes off his mask, and we finally see the deformity.
He will have a face like mine.
That is not just an awesome bit of makeup work, but it's actually very close to the way LaRue describes the Phantom's face in the original Phantom novel. But back to the Ninth Plague scene, because this is incredibly well written. Just listen to the pain in Vincent Price's voice, which he still gets through, even despite the fact that his voice is being mechanically altered.
My wife existed only 6 minutes on the operating table. You murdered her. No. Murdered her.
Gosh, Vincent Price, he's just one of the most underrated actors ever. I mean, I know he's a household name, but people just don't appreciate what an incredible actor this guy was. Joseph Cotten just barely saves his son. I like that, because the other doctors, you might actually think, well, you know what, maybe they did deserve it, because they don't give us a lot of information about the surgery. So, like, for all we know, maybe Dr. Phibes is right. However, killing or disfiguring a man's child is a step too far, so we can be on the doctor's side whether or not he actually did cause Phibes' wife's death. That's a tongue twister. But by the time the police arrive, Dr. Phibes is already on his way out, using his organ vader? Yep, I'm copywriting that. As Joseph Cotten saves his son, naturally the police are there doing next to nothing, because that's what they've done the whole movie, but they do cause Volnavia, who is in the process of destroying Phibes' workshop, to step backwards into the path of the acid, and acid pours all over her face, deforming and theoretically killing her as well. Dr. Phibes puts himself into a big glass coffin where the body of his wife has been perfectly preserved. He plugs himself up and has all of his blood drained out and replaced with embalming fluid, killing him as the coffin closes over him, leaving him in darkness, which technically I think is the 9th plague, but in this it's the 10th plague, because that's it. He's accomplished his mission, so he can go and be at peace with his wife, believing that Joseph Cotten has been punished, whether or not he actually was. Now, that would be a spectacular ending if the coffin just closed and we saw on the top of the tomb the image of an eclipse, and we get it, the final plague, darkness, Dr. Phibes, the sun is okay, Joseph Cotten is okay. We should have ended with that image, because it's a fantastic image. Unfortunately, they tag on like an extra minute where the police come down there, look directly at the tomb, and they're like, I guess Dr. Phibes escaped. Well, we better go catch him. Gosh, I get it, it's a comedy, and, in a way it's ending on the joke of like, well, the police never learn. They're still just as silly as they were at the beginning. But in a way, the tragedy of Dr. Phibes' character is so good, I kind of wanted them to take it seriously for just that last couple of minutes. But if you could just take out that last minute and a half, this movie is just awesome. It's just fantastic. Even the ending is not bad, but it's just, I think, one of the best horror films, horror comedies especially, of all time. In fact, I think it was rated in the top 100 horror movies, and I don't disagree. It would be in probably in my top, it'd definitely be in my top 50 favorite films of all time. It's a great movie. It's very unique, very quirky, very weird, but I like movies like that, and I know a lot of you do too. I would not really call this a Phantom movie. It's more Phantom adjacent, but it's, much like Eyes Without a Face, so clearly inspired by the Phantom story and by other Phantom movies that it would be ridiculous not to count it. Now, with Dr. Phibes and Eyes Without a Face out of the way, I think from here on we actually are going to get back into direct adaptations. Well, as direct as things like Phantom of the Paradise and Phantom of Hollywood can be. Nonetheless, even the names tell you exactly what they're imitating, whereas these movies are a little more creative with their liberties. Now, before I go, guys, I do have one quick thing to mention. On my Patreon, I'm going to start uploading vlogs showing behind-the-scenes videos of the making of my Phantom movie. So if you're interested in following along and kind of seeing some insider information about what the film's going to be like, please follow us on there. A lot of those videos are going to be free. You won't even have to pay to watch them. You just have to have a Patreon account and subscribe to the free tier, and you can watch those. And by the way, the early access videos for my paying members, those will start back up this week. I got a couple weeks behind there, and I didn't post early access, but I will be going forward. Sorry, it was just scheduling the theater and stuff kind of got in my way a little bit, but we'll have that back up soon. Thank you, everybody, for watching. God bless you, and I'll see you in the Jack Cassidy 1974 Phantom of Hollywood.